Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here in person and virtually. From your testimony, we as Conservatives over the last 10 years certainly have advocated for certainty, clarity, predictability, and fairness in conditions for proponents to be able to invest and build, and have long advocated for expedited approvals and for clarity from the government. Mr. Bradley, maybe we could start with you. Can you outline your main concerns regarding C-5 in terms of certainty and clarity?
The principal concerns that I have are what's not covered by C-5. I think the challenge that I foresee is the expectation is there will be a small set of projects that will be deemed in the national interest. But what is going to be required to be able to meet our future requirements in the electricity sector and probably for other critical infrastructure sectors will likely be both within those that small subset of national interest projects, but a lot of them will be outside of the national interest projects. And so C-5 does not address some fundamental problems that we see as a sector with, for example, clean electricity regulations, the Impact Assessment Act, the Fisheries Act, and others. So our concern is really with respect to what isn't covered and what projects that would fall outside of deemed as within the national interest.
Yes, and to your point, I wonder if you might share some of the concerns that your members who are on the front lines of having to deliver affordable, reliable power to residents right across the country, if you might expand on those differences among the provinces, the punitive, one-size-fits-all nature of the electricity regulations, and also if you have any comments on the timelines for decisions to date about projects that are waiting for approval.
Sure. Yes. The issues around clean electricity regulations, and we've been very clear over the past year with both officials within the department and with elected officials in terms of what our concerns are. We've been very clear that our concerns have to do with the reliability impacts and the cost in some jurisdictions in the country, most particularly Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, but not exclusively in those jurisdictions. And our concerns are not political, as I keep telling people for the past year. This is a question of physics. It is just basic physics. The clean electricity regulations were developed and based upon economic models. And the people in my sector are responsible for reliability, and their reliability projections are not based upon economic models, they're based upon reliability models. And so the principal concerns that we've been bringing forward are the concerns of the system operators and the people that actually have to deliver electricity to customers. So we see an impact here directly, potentially directly on reliability and on rates in multiple jurisdictions in the country.
This is part of the reason why Conservatives advocate to scrap the electricity regulations, particularly in the context of a government that says it does want to fast track and provide clarity and certainty for proponents like the members that you represent. And so to that end, then, does it concern you, again, that there isn't clarity, as you indicated, around definitions of the national interest, but there's also the ability in C-5 for sweeping power to, once a project has been designated the national interest, also remove it. And so does that lack of clarity concern your members in terms of being able to make your long-term decisions?
Well, I mean, the missing piece in all of this in the legislation, and of course, given the short timelines, it's not terribly surprising. Schedule 1 is blank. And so, you know, there's open questions in terms of what would be in Schedule 1, what would be out of Schedule 1, and then whether something remains within the national interest. So yes, those are certainly concerns that we would have. We think directionally this is good. We're hoping that it actually, as I indicated in my prepared remarks, signals a change and a change that we'll see really throughout the different regulatory authorities, because there's something in the order of about 90 federal laws, regulations, and statutes that actually affect the electricity sector, a sector that is in theory a provincial responsibility. But the ability to actually bring a project forward trips over a multitude of all of these different statutes, and so we're hoping that this is a signal of not just addressing what can be done for national interest projects, but indicative of a more efficient approach to regulation going forward.
Would you agree that then what might make more sense, instead of a temporary bill that is set up to be a workaround around the various policies and legislations that your members have to navigate, wouldn't it make more sense, either in this bill to have clarity on Schedule 1, the conditions that proponents must meet, and a definition of the national interest, but also wouldn't it make more sense then just to actually streamline and fix the fundamental issues in terms of the excessive red tape and uncertainty that your members face?
20-second response, please, sir.
Oh.
Sure. Yes, it would be great to see those 90 different statutes, laws, and so on changed. But I think that's not something we would expect to see in the first week of a government. So I recognize that time is short.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradley, and thank you, Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair and clerks, for organizing this so promptly, and thank you to the witnesses for coming so quickly. We realized the short notice. Mr. Bradley, I'm going to start with you. Of course, we spent a lot of our time on the Building Canada Act, but the first part of the piece of legislation, Bill C-5, is with respect to interprovincial trade. You talked about the 50 different, or 90, should say, pieces of federal legislation. Can you also add in there the provincial part? How many different pieces of, if you know roughly, provincial legislation do electricity providers have to adhere to? And are there conflict of laws or issues, what we would call interprovincial trade barriers, that are affecting your industry as well?
It's an excellent question. It's one for which I don't have a precise answer. To be able to calculate across 10 provinces and 3 territories all of the different laws and statutes that impact the electricity sector would be certainly a challenge.
So would it be helpful to your industry if, in fact, government officials from all provinces as well as the federal government came together and either had a system of mutual recognition or a harmonization of those regulations? Would that be of benefit, and would that provide economic benefits for Canadians?
Yes.
Thank you. So maybe that's something we could have had included in Bill C-5. Is that fair?
Well, as I said earlier, I recognize that the time is short. There'd be a lot of, as I said, lots of things that I'd like to see addressed. But where we at the same time, I must say I'm certainly heartened by the openness. We seem to be at a particular point in time right now where there is an openness in provincial capitals and here in Ottawa to look at ways to collaborate more closely and to reduce trade barriers. Certainly, things that would be of benefit to the sector right across the board. Whether it's a recognition of credentials in the trades to making it simpler to trade across borders.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I think this is an incredible moment, and I think that the government, by taking very limited steps on interprovincial trade, is sort of missing the moment. But I'll move on to the Building Canada Act. So one of the worries that I might have is that the government's actually not going to list enough projects to be national interest projects to actually make an impact. I know that you wouldn't have exact numbers, but as much as you can, give us what you would think would be a win in terms of the amount of project within your industry would be approved by the government. Would that be $500 million worth? Would it be $1 billion? Would it be $500 billion? What type of numbers would you hope to see being classified as national interest projects within your industry?
Yeah, so we don't have a number, and we're again, because this is fairly early days in terms of the legislation. We don't have a clear indication of how expansive that list may be. We do know that the investments that are going to be required in this sector, out to 2050 are in the order of $1.7 trillion. And so the investments are going to be very significant. But I don't have a number in terms of what we would want to see included in national interest projects.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. And I'm going to ask you, Ms. Kokonos, if I've got that right, the same question.
Yeah, so this is something that came up during our consultations, actually. And at the time, we talked about 15 to 20 projects. And it's not really about the value. I think it's about the number. And, the public service is going to have to rethink this process, almost reverse engineer it, taking into account this 2-year window. And there's a lot to consider, a lot to work through with the provinces. So I would recommend like a manageable number. 15 to 20 is what we talked about during our consultations. And we're going to learn a lot through this first wave of projects. That is going to inform future projects, but also we want it to inform the regulatory process for all projects going forward in the future. And you know, they want to set themselves up to succeed, right? So if you overshoot, you could be setting yourself up for failure.
Just quickly, because I'm out of time here. When you say 50 to 20 projects, you mean
15 to 20.
15 to 20
Yes.
projects, sorry, by the end of the year, is that, or what's the time frame then?
No, that would be to approve them up front within, you know, the next few months, and then they'd have the 2-year window.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kokonos, and thank you, Mr. Lawrence.